I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. It's a snowy day in New York City. Andrew Quo, are you a cozy boy this morning?
It's 2025. I've been a cozy boy my whole life. So I guess my resolution is to get cozier.
Can a cozy boy get cozier still? I guess that would be a cozier boy, and then you graduate to being the coziest boy.
There's a scale of cozy, right? You could be like, oh, I'm wearing a Skittles puffer. I'm wearing a Milk Duds leather. That's pretty cozy. But what if you're wearing like a Jujubees flannel while eating Jujubes?
Like you're swaddled in your score bar parka.
And there are certain treats that are cozier than other treats, right? Because you don't tuck into nerds the same way you tuck into a Milky Way.
Right. I think the coziest of the candy garments would be some sort of anorak, perhaps, or shawl, but like mallow, some sort of mallow.
I mean,
like a mallow cup, perhaps, or maybe mounds. I think
Three Musketeers is pretty mallowy. I know it's, what do they call that? Nougat? No.
No one's ever figured out what nougat is.
Ted Nougat. I think it's weird. I had a bunch of Halloween candy that I'm still working through, and I had my first Three Musketeers since I was maybe a child before high school because I hated them. And all these recipes have changed, right? Like none of these candies taste the same as I remember them. Three Musketeers, not bad, pretty cozy.
I saw something happen on Twitter. It was a revelation. Maybe it was Willie Staley. I forget exactly who it was. Like, wait a minute. The Twix filling is just broken up parts of other Twix bars?
Oh, yeah, that was cool. There's a lot of reveals happening. One of which is Bailey's is just emulsified, basically mayonnaise. It's vegetable oil, and that people freaked out about that.
Like the alcohol?
It's a genius. Some nerds chimed in. They were like, the fact that it's shelf stable indefinitely is like a miracle of science. But it's not totally vegetable oil, but there's a significant amount of vegetable oil in that alcoholic beverage.
To me, it's Irish cream, Andrew.
It's cream in a Wu-Tang sense, Ben. Not cream as in a cow bird flu sense. Not. I know you're a raw milk guy.
Cream.
Yeah. It's not a raw milk nation over here.
I feel like raw milk has gotten a bad rap recently.
Well, with the bird flu coming, it's about to get a worse rap.
That's what I'm saying.
No Wu-Tang puns intended.
Yeah.
Why has it been getting a bad rap?
Well, it is tied to the coming bird flu pandemic.
And also the brain flu that Raw Milk Nation kind of possesses online. Have you ever had milk that was not pasteurized?
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not totally sure what the pasteurization process entails.
It's just boiling
it. Is it just heating it?
Can we get Louis on the line? I mean, we are in the age of the Frenchman. He's got to be around somewhere to ask these basic questions. I'll never know the answer.
Because my answer to you, we'll never figure this out. But my answer to that was, as a kid, I would stay at my cousin's house and they would milk goats in the morning and they would drink goat's milk. They were living out in the countryside.
Whoa.
And we would drink that milk, but I know it went into the freezer or the fridge, and I know that there was like a boiling process. So would that be pasteurization?
I have always read it as a heating process that didn't necessarily like create cheese or change the thing, but it was indeed up to the point of like safely killing certain bacteria. And cheese
Yeah, maybe
dorks
they did
hate it
that.
because good bacteria get killed, and you don't have the ooey gooey stinky French cheese that Wembayana has to smuggle into chess games.
Well, I mean, I get it. Like you and all of your libertarian friends, you get
Mhm,
together.
mhm.
You got your
You're the
raw
one who's
milk.
had raw
You're
milk. I've never. You're the raw milk drinker.
you're over there. You're eating a nice slab of liver. You've
Hmm.
got your non-seed oils.
Hmm.
Is that like the diet for the alt right now? Like you have a dinner party. It's like okay, kidneys, raw milk, and I don't know what kind of oil do they like. Olive oil? Does that work?
Avocado
Oh,
oil,
tallow.
tallow.
Tallow. They
Sure.
love tallow. That's their bag.
Well,
What else is on the menu?
the make basketball great again scene is fragmented, right? Because there's that scene, the muscle heads, but then there's also the Elon Musk dorks, the Adrian Dittmans who live off of Bailey's, pasteurized milk, and flaming hot Cheetos, Jolt Cola.
And right. Did they ever actually make Mountain Dew gamer fuel? Was that just an urban
Hmm.
myth?
Maybe there's a lot of different Mountain Dews. I fucking loved Mountain Dew when I used to drink soda. God damn, that was the best one. Not too fizzy, very flavorful, and like this murky pea yellow that felt like you were paying for something more substantial than like 7-Eleven. I mean, 7 Up.
Right. It was like you were getting yourself 16 ounces of Nickelodeon slime.
Hmm. Well, if you're working all night on a beige Apple Tower with your zip drive and side quests, you want that that design fuel, that Quark Express fuel to really matter.
Or you're a member of the, let's say, 2015 Atlanta Hawks
Mm-hmm.
with Coach Bud, and you want something to match your uniforms.
Mm-hmm. It's sad. I mean, even if the Thunder decided to adopt the Jolt Cola brand, it would be better than what they got now.
You know where Jolt Cola is from, Andrew? That's right.
Greenpoint, Greenpoint, Brooklyn. No.
Further north.
Yo, the past glory of America. The
It might still be from up there. Does it still exist? Maybe not.
Jolt, it has to. It has to, right?
This would be the era for them to thrive.
I mean, the real estate wars for beverages is insane. Since Jolt Cola used to occupy a space next to like Normie, Coke, and Mountain Dew, shit's gone crazy, right? You have all these turbo drinks, you have like Frost versions, you have Diet Coke, you have Coke Zero, and then you have all like the new guys like you're into the liquid death shit.
So here's a brief history. I made the cultural error of looking something up on Wikipedia, but it's for
Gotta go to Reddit now.
our listeners. It's for our listeners. Jolt Cola, founded by the Jolt Company of Rochester, New York.
Joe Jolt.
It started Mike Jolt.
Yeah.
It started out on high caffeine, high sugar for wakefulness. All the sugar and twice the caffeine was the slogan.
Hmm.
And then its slow history, it kind of crumbled. It sold off its controlling interests over 10 years ago, more like 15 years ago. And then in 2024, like 2 months ago, the sports supplement company Redcon One announced an upcoming release of a sugar-free energy drink with Jolt Cola co-branding. So all that to say, the pride of Rochester is back.
Yeah, it's like watching a Blazers game up in here. Um, the Wikipedia entry fails to mention that the Jolt also asked for a trade to any team outside of the Heat. But I don't want to get into basketball yet. But like,
Don't jump the
The
gun.
Jolt wants out. He
So
wants to party
one,
less. Shouldn't he want to party more?
so yeah, we're going to talk all about Jimmy Butler's abandonment of culture in a second. But I know you are concerned with one thing right now. You are not partying enough.
They claim I'm not partying enough, but I am partying. What did you do for New
Well,
Year's Eve?
you penned an article for the Atlantic
Right, called
recently.
party more. I only saw the headline. What did a man who I have to live vicariously through, party wise, do on New Year's Eve this year?
Well, I went to a friend's house nearby,
Mm-hmm.
hung out a little bit there, and it was more of a let's call it a gathering
Mm-hmm.
than a party, right? So we hosted in the new year, it was nice, and then people kind of departed. And I was like,
Sure.
okay, cool. So one of my friends was there. He's like, I know about this other party. He's like, it's in Williamsburg. It's a loft. It's like, all right, that sounds like we'll have a little different location. Check out a few more things, and most importantly, it's walking because you don't want to chase the party, but once you're in a vehicle, then it's even worse. When you're really changing location. I don't know the last time you were out on a night when people were really trying to use Ubers, but it's like $110. It's like to get from whatever one side of Brooklyn to the other.
No Manhattan?
It was no. I was thinking about Time Again.
Yeah.
Our buddy Despot. They had a musical lineup, including Joey with two Y's, who's a pretty hilarious artist, and some other people. But I don't really know of anything that sounded incredible.
Did you
But
swing by
then
The
again,
Imperfect, that party at Baby's?
no, but there's two new spots also that our buddy Billy Jones, who does Babies All Right,
Shout out
is
to
involved with in the city.
Baller Billy. The Baller.
He's the baller Billy. He's reopening Pyramid with a different name on Avenue A, and then a place I think on Essex that used to be Sons of Essex.
Yeah. Oh, so
That's
that's
now
over? Sons of Essex is over.
well, yeah, he's reopened it. I'm not sure with who, but as a bar called Funny Bar or something like that.
We need Billy more than ever. But I remember the Pyramid is pretty epic. My band played there when I was like 15 or 16. That thing has been around for a fucking long time.
No, institution.
Yeah, and it's gone through eras of like dormancy. Like it's not been taken care of. I wish it was still the Pyramid, but also 30 years, 40 years, 50 years is a good run. Shout out to Billy, who is holding that nightlife torch. Anyone you know go to Jeans?
You mean on New Year's?
Yeah.
Probably, but I haven't really checked in with anybody.
Okay. Do you spend New Year's with good friends, fun people, or strangers? Like, what is the plan of attack? Obviously, you kind of see a little of everything if you're moving around. But like, what do you prioritize? The party or the coziness?
I think you want to be around friends at midnight. That to me is the only actual priority.
Mm-hmm.
The rest, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You could show up right before. You could have dinner before. You could do nothing before. You could go out super late. You could call it a night. I just think the toast is that's the money moment. You got your drink. You see some friends. Being with like just one buddy, unless it's like your partner at a restaurant or something like that. But if you're meeting with friends, I think that's when you want to be around people that at least you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's like, yeah, sure, you go to like Times Square and you're like high-fiving a bunch of strangers. Cool, whatever.
Yeah.
With your diapers on.
There's a bunch of ways to do that. So it sounds like you partied more this year. In 2025, it sounds like you're partying more. You've already been to more parties than I have in 2025, which is a few after midnight. Do you think this article has a point?
Well, unfortunately, there's just no way to know what it says within that article, as neither of us have read it. But I'm going to assume they're going to make some social commentary.
A champagne glass, right?
about today's society and that we need to put down our phones
Mm-hmm.
and we need to touch glass,
Yeah. Touch
beer
martini
glass.
glass. Right. Um, I mean, fair, right? Like human
Wait,
interaction is hilarious.
fair as in like the point that we're assuming they made in that story is a reasonable point for them to perhaps have made.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, we're,
I disagree.
yeah.
Well, here's where they're wrong.
Train fare, I meant. Yeah, I mean, just the idea you should be partying more is gruel, right? It's an awesome kind of jump off because is illegally streaming NBA like Knicks Thunder games while eating mapo tofu over the sink with two sleeping children, partying more or less. Because I say that facetiously, but also, man, I feel like I've had my 70% fill of drinking alcohol with a combination of close friends, fun friends, and strangers.
If one read this article, perhaps we would find out what specifically they were talking about, but I can only gather that they're saying we should go out dancing or something. It's probably not like we should all be binge drinking with the homies more. But maybe it is.
What if we went out and tried like a new sparkle gas in order to get high? Would this hypothetical article be like, that's partying a little too far? What if I was like, I want to get addicted to a new drug?
Right. Like, okay, we need to party. I'm like, I'm ahead of you. I just called a guy and he's bringing over a bunch of whippets.
Mhm.
Like, well,
Mhm.
we were told to party harder, sir.
It's like I have never done cocaine, but I read this article. I read the headline of this article, so I want to do some rails now.
Look, I'm not judgmental about this. I wonder if that's what this article said.
Mhm.
I bet it's more like you should go out dancing.
I've always thought it was
Have a tipple.
I've always thought it was funny because if you have a really wonderful era of partying, the result of that is not more partying. The result of that is like a family in a house with lights out at 8 o'clock. Do you know what I mean? It's like those memes of party people who are like, can you believe what happened this year? I was partying 9 months ago and now I have a kid. I'm like, that's exactly what happens. Like sometimes I'm with my screaming toddlers, like, and I see two people on a date in the afternoon or maybe like after um, a long night. And they're like giving us evil eyes, just being like, oh, these kids are driving me crazy. I'm like, trust me, they're also driving me crazy. And if your situation works out, great. You're going to be in my position in 9 months.
So they should be partying now
Less
while they can.
party less. You want sustainable partying. You don't want to party too much because partying too much gives you a loving family. You want to party just enough so you can still go out forever.
The perfect partying podcast.
No one goes out to like three locales in one night and is just like, I just want to hang out with my friends platonically, right? You're looking for like a connection or out there. Like if you weren't, you would just stay at your friend's house eating chicken escarole soup.
Well, it's also the hive mind.
Mhm.
You know, you're acting as a team.
Mhm.
If someone says, "Hey, I want to go to this party because there's this girl there who has this loft," you're like, "All right, we're riding."
And then you would be like, maybe there's a partner out there for me that shares the same sensibilities about the subway system and the Oklahoma City Thunder.
They're out there somewhere, Andrew.
I mean,
So
there's that Thunder party in Williamsburg somewhere.
So you've alluded a few times here to congestion pricing. Controversial.
Is it?
Just went into effect.
Is it?
Well,
That's my question.
I mean, Sort of. I don't know.
Yeah.
Look, it just went into effect. It just went into effect on Sunday.
Mhm.
So we discussed this in the past. They've amended it to being $9 instead of 18, which I think is more reasonable.
Mhm.
And I feel like the cutoff is about 9 p.m. I think it's like 9 to 9 or whatever. It's something along those lines. So my stance remains correct and unchanged, which is that, just to clarify for all those anti-car advocates out there, that I am fine with closing parts of the city. I'm fine with restricting traffic, only commercial vehicles and cabs, whatever. I just don't like the economic component because I think that is something that rewards people who don't actually have to think about paying an extra $9. And it rewards people who live in Manhattan. It rewards people who drive in Manhattan, who have drivers in Manhattan. They're the ones who like get a huge win out of this. Oh, there's no traffic and I don't pay anything. And I'm like already garaging my car in Manhattan and I'm whipping around. And to me, those are the people who are really benefiting from this. So my issue is just with the financial element, that it, sure, you should probably take public transportation if you don't feel like paying extra a week. But if you're rich, yeah, sure, drive in. If you don't mind spending whatever that would come out to, $9 for, let's say, $250 a month on fares, if that's nothing to you, like almost $3,000 a year for the math. If that means nothing to you, then absolutely you can keep driving and it's cool.
So you're on the side of New York's finest, the cops and the firemen, who also agree with that. They're like, yo, it favors people that aren't us, and we're coming in from New Jersey and Queens and all this stuff. And how am I going to get to work? I'm above using the MTA.
See, I'm like, me, I think my opinion is so morally correct, and because
You're
because
the law enforcement of this.
as someone who both has a car
Oh,
but
you have a
uses
car?
it judiciously,
You have a car?
but uses it judiciously,
Okay.
and also rides the subway like yourself without fear of all the dangers lurking beneath the surface of New York City, I will take the subway or I drive. Like, I'm really versatile. I'm like the LeBron James of this subject. I can see all sides in ways that most people can't.
And you can afford this this $9 tax.
Well, again, it barely applies to me. I'm just thinking of the common man. I probably drive into the city once a week. If that costs $9, I can afford it. That's like half a beer.
Yeah, that's half a Mapo martini at a good restaurant.
At La Spaghetti.
Yeah.
It's like, it's half a Caesar salad, amaretto sour.
You get a couple of Mapo martinis at Sir Linguine, you're out like $45. Or like,
but if you get a couple Mapo martinis in you, you are touching glass. That's for sure.
It's always a conundrum. Do you want to touch Mapo martini glass, or do you want to have access to downtown Manhattan in your car below 60th Street? 2 times.
All I know is if I was someone who lived in Manhattan with a car, I'd just be driving around all willy-nilly. I saw that thing yesterday where a guy was like, it's working. There's no traffic on the bridges. I was like, oh yeah, but who's actually the winning in that, though? Just to be clear. I just mean, okay, I get the idea that, like, all right, people are going to pay money, let's go to the MTA, but like, it's working. There's no traffic.
That guy was weird because I don't believe there is a controversy here. I think it really or it's annoying for some people, like that guy who like lives right below and has to visit his brother, the guy who went viral, who's actually like the CEO of City Habitat Real Estate or something. There's wealthy people here and there. We're not counting wallets here, or are we? But I get the aesthetic people. I wish they just were better at talking about it, not being like, I won. It's just like, yo, it's nice to have a tick less honking, maybe crossing the street with the fewer cars. Aesthetically, I'm enjoying this. Like, that would be cool. I agree. I don't know who wins except for the aesthetes.
Right, and that's my main point here, right? It's like, well, the people who win are wealthy people who live in Manhattan, specifically ones who drive their own cars. Like that's what I'm saying. They have gotten a win. That's a win for
Sticker
them.
manufacturers win. The ones you put on your license plate so they're not readable with a camera.
Big win for them. Rideshare companies win.
Public transportation wins.
Yeah, I mean, also the MTA wins. We'll see how that applies to public transportation.
I mean, there's going to be eyes on it now, right? Because it is.
I hope so, because they're notorious for keeping multiple sets of books and money just vanishing. So hopefully there is scrutiny.
Thankfully, we have an ethical mayor in charge.
Nothing gets by that guy.
No Luigi.
That's a tight ship.
Yeah, there's no Luigis that get by him.
Nope, no, they got him. He'll nab him right away. But right, so I think when I'm saying, okay, no one's coming into Manhattan, and I think it's what you said. Like, who loves that? Well, of course, if you live in Manhattan, you're like, this is great. There's less traffic, there's less people, it's less noisy, there's less pollution. That's great if you live in Manhattan. But this brings me to another part of my sort of objection to it. I'm like, wait, all right, you want to hold these guys in Jersey and Long Island to fairs to come on to the city, but we're amongst the 5 boroughs. Like, we're in Brooklyn. Okay, let's change it up. You want to go to a Nets game? $9 to get off the subway. Oh, you come from Manhattan? $9. You want to see the Yankees? Sorry, too many people coming up from Manhattan getting off at Yankee Stadium. It's gonna be $9 a head to get into the Bronx. Sorry.
Yeah, you're kind of convincing me that it's a better thing than I thought, because you don't have to drive to a Knicks game. Just take the bus. The bus, the subway leaves you right into one of the arteries of New York City, and that leads you to the Knicks, and some sort of pretzel filled with a hot dog. It's like there's Auntie Anne's and lavo meatballs to be had right off of the subway. I love the subway. I don't like a sea of SUVs with one driver in them. Allegedly allegedly this will persuade people to rideshare, to to make it more affordable for their daily commute, to kind of share rides if we're kind of turning this city into a more efficient, greener city, whatever. I don't know if it's going to change much, especially with technology. I think they're going to need better technology to enforce this, and that costs money and some sort of intent, which I think this whole thing is a little bit half-assed. To your point, I don't think the MTA is going to get great. I don't think buses and subways are going to be cleaner or safer. And I don't think this technology is going to hammer enough where people are like, I'm willing to risk it with my license plate. Maybe someone has taken out that camera with a yellow laser or a green laser that's being pushed by certain city officials who don't like this either. It's present company excluded. The worst people seem to be against this, right? Like cops, politicians, rich people.
Rich people mostly like it.
Well, the protesters have all been wealthy white people, and that's the joke on Twitter, right? Like the people who
I saw that
were residents of that.
Let me talk about them for a little bit here, just for a second, because I know you are a feverishly anti-car advocate, but you're not a psycho. You don't like cars. You don't like seeing them. I respect it. As I've said many times, I'm kind of anti-car too. If you want to get rid of vehicles in like all of downtown Manhattan, like, I'm listening. You can give me the compelling reason. I just don't like the economic component. That's my objection to any of these plans, and that it creates it based on class.
Are people who are less wealthy driving their cars into Manhattan? That's a debate, right? Like, show me one. This is that kind of thing.
Yes, but I'm saying this is more of like a middle class thing, in my opinion, than it is about being like, because the talking point for people who are pro congestion pricing is like, yeah, but poor people are already taking public transportation. I'm like, but what is it that you want? Like, not you. When people are like advocating this, I'm like, you live in Brooklyn. This literally doesn't affect you at all. Why are you so vehement about wanting congestion parking or congestion pricing? It doesn't change anything about where you live. No impact at all on you. When you're in Manhattan, you're not in a car because that would be immoral. Not you. I'm talking about a fictional person. So you don't care about there being congestion at all. You actually like the fact that drivers are stuck in their place and can't go anywhere because it's a thumb in the eye of driving. Like, haha, look at you suckers in traffic, and I'm walking around and I'm using the subway and you're jammed there and you got to pay for parking. They don't care about congestion in the least. Like, I'm just saying, my biggest problem with the other side of this argument, not the reasonable one that you are providing for myself, but is that they are really bad faith. They're kind of like anti-abortion advocates, where it's like they want to abolish cars in New York City. So any way to make it more onerous, more expensive, more inconvenient, more annoying to own one is a good thing, because hopefully it will make people get rid of their cars. So you can't really negotiate and come to ideas with that group because they don't care. They'll argue about the environment. They'll argue about congestion. Like, they just don't care. They're just want to make it more annoying and more expensive to have a car. If you said, hey, I got a plan. Everyone who has a car needs to pay $5,000 a year to have it on the street. And if they don't, it's getting towed and their vehicle will be burned. Like, great idea. Sign it up. Perfect. Love it.
I mean, it's sort of like, it reminds me of the NBA dress code, right? Where there were real ethical discussions to be had when they wanted certain people to put on suits and take off like their extra long throwback Mitchell and Ness jerseys, their sneakers on the bench, all this stuff. It was like, yeah, this feels bad, and we can articulate why this feels bad. And then it happened. Everyone's like, oh, we're kind of okay with this. I kind of like suits now. And it just happened, and it became kind of less of an issue than it was within that transitional period. I have a feeling this will be the same. There are many bad faith laws in America, and especially New York City. The food grading system comes to mind. That's like totally in bad faith, real estate practices in complete bad faith. But it becomes so normal that restaurants will be like, we got an A. And I'm like, kind of dark, but okay, or someone like Bloomberg saying, you cannot consume this much sugar in a beverage under my watch. I'm like, this feels bad. Are you going to 11 Madison counting calories there, So I do think everything is done with various degrees of cynicism in this fine city. But I want to see how this plays out, because we might like wearing suits on the bench.
So I would say this about, I think this may work out fine. Again, I don't live in Manhattan, and I don't really drive in Manhattan except for like once a week.
I got priced out of that place,
really,
man. Yeah. I can't.
I just mean this congestion pricing doesn't really apply to me that much. If it did, it would be like once a week tops. And again, I can afford $9. It's half a Stromboli martini. All good. So it really is not about my pockets. I'm not pocket watching myself, Andrew.
You're advocating for the middle class.
Yes. But also, it's that as someone who lives in Greenpoint, I have seen the hell wrought by the anti-car zealots. And they've made 2 substantial changes around the neighborhood where I live. And both of these were by the exact same groups who were funded by rideshare. They're funded by Uber. They're funded by Lyft. And these anti-car people will align with anybody, no matter how toxic, in order to get rid of cars, because that's their mission. That's their greater good. So like, oh, we'll do what Bloomberg wants. Yeah, we'll align with a billionaire. We'll align with Uber. Yeah, they want to get people out of cars. We share the same goal. Our enemy's enemy is our friend. So we'll align with them. And what they've done over here, like by the BQE, they got rid of all the parking under there, and they put a bike lane and a walking lane that no one ever takes, and they put, parking meters. So they just eliminated hundreds of parking spots, and that was the entire goal. They know no one's going to go underneath the fucking BQE as a hike. It's totally unused. But they did it to get rid of all the parking spots because Uber and Lyft wanted to get rid of parking spots because they want people to get rid of their cars. And the advocates for this program, they didn't care that this made no sense. And that way they just did with McGinnis also. We'll see if people use that, but they replaced 2 of the car lanes with bike paths. And at this point, they're only used by delivery guys. And it's like, for every 200 cars, there's one delivery guy on an e-bike. I'm like, that's what's occurred here? All of that strife, all of that everything. You're telling me this was the best you could come up with, was a plan that would create a lane solely for a sporadic delivery guy?
I love this debate to that point because it feels really personal. I think transportation and our usability of the city is deeply personal because of the emotional attachment we have to this place. We have to defend it against chuds who are writing about how shitty the subways are, often Texas or wherever, and we have to fend off people, quote unquote, pushing us out, whoever those people may be. We have to fight the high rises. It is something we as New Yorkers have invested in emotionally. And when I hear people talking about this congestion pricing, it's fascinatingly anecdotal and personal, right? When you hear people being like, hey, I'm trying to get here for my job, and now I can't afford it because my rent and my kids need this. And I'm like, that is real. Check. Do the BQE, check, like parking under there. Overall, I'm like, fewer cars parked under the BQE sounds fine to me. But that's personal for me because I don't have to park my car under the BQE, right? I don't even know about Greenpoint politics because I don't live there.
Of course. Yes. My thing is mostly like, if you are arguing good faith, which I'm not saying that you are or not,
Sure.
But if you're arguing good faith, you'd say like, all right, so it probably doesn't make sense to put a bike path and a pedestrian path under the BQE. That's just probably not going to get that much use.
But they know.
But it was something they knew it wasn't a good idea, but they did it to get rid of parking. And that's what I mean, that out of like bad faith. No one really thought that putting a bike path underneath the BQE would be popular. It's disgusting. No one wants to walk underneath the BQE.
No, but it's a spacing issue,
and no one does.
Right? It's illegal defense. If they say you can't park there, people will park there. If they put a bike lane there, they have an excuse maybe to deter you or give you a different kind of ticket.
Oh, no. Parking was fully legal.
That's what I mean. If they want to get rid of it and make it illegal, they can either give you tickets if you decide to park there, or they can put a spacer there in the dunker spot, so you can't occupy the dunker spot.
So as you said, anecdotal. Before it had the same rules as regular street parking.
Right.
Like you could get ticketed if you're on the wrong side and you had to move it back and forth.
Right.
Say it basically was like you were parking on the street, but you were under the BQ.
Sure, yeah.
And they now made it metered. It's the only place around here that's metered at all.
Aren't they trying to do some sort of like food market there or like flea market under the BQE? Not maybe in Greenpoint.
Yeah. No, they do that around Williamsburg, and then they do something by the K-hole Bridge, whatever it's called around here.
The ketamine bridge. Activating underneath bridges is like so sad to me, because to your point, like I think the worst square footage in New York is Broadway in Brooklyn. It is just, ugh, it's gross, and it speaks of the raised subway tracks for the JM train. It's like there's no way.
And honestly, the BQE is even worse because it's just it's disgusting.
It's gross, right? And like I've seen really cool businesses try to open under the subway, and it just doesn't work. It's just like, I don't believe in the broken windows theory, but like the griminess is hard to overcome down there where I walk along that street every day, and I look at those SUVs with one person in them as I'm waiting for 20 minutes for the bus that's 2 stops away. But anecdotal again.
But again, congestion pricing not going to help you over there, buddy.
No, but like if it deters some, sure. I mean, Brooklyn is lost. Brooklyn was poorly designed that way, Broadway should not be an artery that it is. But I'm a vibist here. I'm a grill master here. I don't care about the stats. I don't care if people were like, this affects this is actually what's happening. These are the informational points we have. I'm just like, cars are ugly. I hate them.
Right. I'm saying you're a bad faith operator here.
I just don't care about cars.
But
I live in New York City.
yeah,
But
we're on the same page.
this
I just think these you can't. I think that anti-car people. This is my last point on it. Is that they actually do bad projects in hopes of making it harder to own a vehicle instead of doing good projects that could do both. That's my main thing. All they do is bike lanes. If they had said, McGinnis, we're going to turn it into 2 lanes and we're going to build a park and a basketball court. We're going to build a monorail. We're going to do a trolley. It's like, no, they just got rid of 2 lanes and turned them into unused bike lanes. Nothing changed. It looks visually exactly the same, except it's harder to cross now because the traffic is all in 1 lane. So it's slower and backed up versus when it was 2 lanes, they would go by and you could walk. Like it had no functional value other than being more annoying and creating bike lanes that people don't use.
every mode of transportation, whether that's sneakers, e-bikes, bicycles, fixed gears, city bikes, cars, scooters, skateboards, despicable, right? Well, we hate everything that moves. If you're uh, a walker and you walk fast and you cut people off, you're the worst. Bike lane people, who you're talking about getting rid of car stuff, the worst. Cab drivers, the worst. We just hate things that move because it's in our way, right?
Maybe this is you, me.
We are the traffic. We are the congestion, right? It's like it's not me. I need to get to work. I'm not the problem.
No, everyone else
Yeah.
is the one that's making it difficult to get across the Williamsburg Bridge. It's not me.
Yo,
I have to go. The rest of these jokers, I don't know what they're doing.
what do we do about these subways, man?
Right. So, in the midst of this congestion pricing debate, you've got a population people like, but you want us to get into these death traps? Like I have to drive, otherwise I'm going to be burned alive. I'm going to be shot. I'm going to be stabbed. I'm going to be robbed. I can't be on the subway train with those loons, with those illegal immigrants, with all these people that are making this so dangerous. These are the options you're giving me. It's basically extortion, Andrew. $9 or you die. Or you die a lonely death in a subway car at the hands of a lunatic.
I think chuds are annoying. I think people who don't live in New York calling it unlivable is funny, etc. I took the subway a ton this break. Yeah, a lot. Transferring. My toddler right now is obsessed with the train, so he wants to transfer a lot. He wants to go to trains that we've never been on, so we have to go seek those out. And some experiences have been sketchy. And, when the person was horrifyingly lit on fire, it was crazy. The person who got pushed down into the tracks and murdered, insane. And then all these footage, this kind of surveillance footage that we have on our phones, like there's if you take the subway especially in the dead cold winter, December or January, there's going to be an unhoused situation where people need warmth and survival instincts take over, and they occupy the space they're allowed to occupy as citizens. I was taking the train and I'm like, they need to do a better job on this, man. The chuds are annoying, but it's I think disingenuous to say whatever, it's safe. And I'm like, I've been on a couple of trains where like I looked at the person next to me and be like, if something happens, what are we gonna do? Because it was kind of weird. And luckily nothing did. But that is a difficult way to just try to go up to see the tree in Rockefeller Center.
Yeah, I've never really had a bad experience on the subway. I ride it quite a bit. not as much as you do, but I mean, I have over my life ridden it zillions and zillions of times at all hours. I don't think I've ever had an experience other than like, oh, this guy is acting, in a way that's alarming or jarring on the train once in a blue moon. But
Also,
I
schizophrenic
think a
people love
huge,
me. Schizophrenic people love me because I don't pose a threat to them. There's a performative aspect that I kind of trigger sometimes. Short Asian dude with glasses, like
they just want to pod with you.
they want my Knicks takes, but like especially with a kid. I mean, I don't mean to interrupt you, but there's a there's a part of a disorder that is like if I act out and get away with it, I feel empowered. And if I act out and don't get away with it, my chances are better around someone who cannot fight me.
Little do they know that with your leg lengthening surgery, you've become a quite formidable kickboxer.
Mapo muscles, that's what they say.
But I understand that, and I'm not discounting being like a taller guy, which is different from being not only you, but say like a woman who may say, "Oh, I feel
Sure.
more imperiled for a number of reasons." I understand all that, and I'm not going to be targeted as much as other people are going to be. I get it, but to me, it's like when you look at the numbers, you know that it's still safe, right? And you can say like, well, the homicides on the subway system doubled last year. Like, holy shit. Yeah, they went from like 5 to 10.
Sure.
And I'm not saying we have to discount that. Like, you don't want there to be any murders. But if you look at the amount of people that are riding the subway over the course of a year, it's millions and millions and millions. If you want to say individual rides that people take, millions and millions and millions.
This is like an E.
The
coli thing,
odds,
though. One person gets E. coli from Chipotle. Statistics don't matter. You're like, I'm not going there.
100%. And this is exactly where I'm going with this, was that like the odds of you say getting murdered on any individual train ride are probably like 1 in a billion, like literally 1 in a billion. Like it's just not going to happen. It happens to, out of all the rides that are taken, it happens like a handful of times per year.
Sure.
So it's very unlikely that anything is going to happen to you, be assaulted, be anything. And this goes to what you were saying about the E. coli though, is that especially with everyone having camera phones, everyone sees it. We all see the video. We all pass it around. Okay, there's a fight, there's a shooting, there's someone on fire, and you watch it and you look and you say, I've been on that subway. I recognize that line. Oh, that's the Whitehall stop. Oh, that's over there. I know. I ride that every day. That could be me screaming or cowering or running or freaking out or on fire or being stabbed. And it creates this idea that the subways are like atrociously dangerous and your demise awaits around every rickety bend. And I don't know how you, as like the MTA, can get over that. The stats say it's safe. They send a bunch of guys with M16s down there to make us feel comfortable. The cops are down there getting overtime in the millions. Like, what can you do? They are safe. There are law enforcement everywhere. But people are like, no, it's a hellhole. It's basically like being in a tiger pit in Vietnam.
I mean, that's the extreme thing that chuds love to talk about, being like, I don't want to get pushed down the subway on the subway tracks. And I'm like, that never happens. But people get spit on, people get bumped, people get yelled at. That's very common. And I am pro subway. I'll take it again later today, happily. But like, the MTA is a Chipotle that sells out every day. They don't need to change, right? Because they're going to sell every taco, every bowl. They're sold out. It's like, sorry, it's all gone. It's like, I got E. coli. It's like, we're really sorry about that. We're going to try to change it, but not really, because we sell out every day. The MTA is kind of a utility that New Yorkers need desperately. There's no choice, right? I have to take it if I need to get to somewhere. I take the bus too. Different vibe in the bus in the winter. In my opinion, less drama in the bus. In the summer, more drama in the bus. It kind of flips because the bus is full of elderly people who don't want to deal with broken urinals that are elevators into the subway, and you can step onto a bus easier. The warmth overnight resides in the subway system. So, January, February are times where this will go down. Like I was I was in your hood, Dime Square, a couple weeks ago, and I was running down to get the train at like 10 p.m. Two people just shooting heroin on the platform. Not a big deal to me. I don't know, but also not great, right? And I was like, this isn't ideal for traveling. However desensitized I am to that drug.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that your point about the MTA it kind of not mattering, like they're the only game in town. It is what it
They
is.
run a monopoly,
And
right?
then right, and then now we're giving them congestion pricing. Or just we're just bullying people right back into their arms. Or
Well,
you want to drive, and MTA is getting that too. Just a racket from these
I
guys.
mean,
But
one would claim, I claim, sorry to interrupt, when you hop a turnstile, it hurts you. And I'm not a communist, I'm not a socialist, but like them not getting revenue in theory, I know the allocation of this money is not great, but when you steal from it and deplete its resources, that's when it gets worse. When you put resources into it, that's when it gets better. I just don't know how they're going to do that. If they just do it like they say they will with congestion pricing revenue, then yeah, hopefully we'll get a layer of paint.
right, I was gonna say, like, I don't think the subway has that many problems that are like solvable at this point. It's like I think they're relatively clean. They're relatively
I
safe.
don't think they're clean. I think they're
They run
relatively
relatively
safe.
on time.
Oh, I don't think any of those things. I think they're usable. They're not on time at all. As we
I mean, I mostly take the L train. So the L train
that's the big
when
money
they
train.
fix
Yeah,
when they fix things up during the pandemic, and
money has gone
they
into
made
that.
it so they're able to they're able to like rotate them around a lot faster than they were.
Mhm.
They really do come every like 4 minutes. It's just like it's like clockwork.
I mean, sheesh. This is a whole different conversation, but the New York City invested in Williamsburg and the L line for sure. They put money into that. Um, I would hope it would run well because that's been a focus of theirs. Because the real estate in Williamsburg, the vertical real estate has really been a boon. But
But it also has the advantage of that it doesn't keep going, so you can just run it into Manhattan and back.
sure, sure, yeah, yeah. Um,
It's not like it's not like a line that goes all the way from Coney Island to like Jamaica Queens, where they're just ambling along.
that
Like
should not be a
you can just whip them
disqualifier, though.
around.
It's like you go too far. We can't make this nice because your train goes too far.
Oh, what I was saying was before it was the L was kind of shitty because they couldn't figure out how to like get them in at the end and like turn them around fast enough.
Right, right.
And that was like what I think a lot of the construction did was
Yeah.
like make it so you wouldn't have to like sit there and wait for like 8 minutes after those unloading whatever. Anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah, the L, as you said, money line. I mean, that was the development of Brooklyn. It's Williamsburg, East Williamsburg,
Even Bushwick, the, the zoning in
Bushwick.
Bushwick
Yeah,
changed. Like there are apartment condo complexes in Bushwick now.
yeah. But yeah, I don't know what you can do though. Is my main point. Like you can make the subways cleaner, but you can put cops down there. You can put money in. You can do all these things. But if people are still going to be seeing every act of violence or someone pooping or someone screaming and it always goes viral, I don't know how you change the perception.
Yeah, and I don't think the perception in this case matters. This is kind of the same take I have with congestion pricing. I don't think I think when someone gets pushed onto the tracks, it's horrifying and memorable and crazy. The same people will be riding the subway in an hour, right? And if you can avoid the subway, just do it. Ride the bus. Sometimes I like to do it just for a change of pace. But the Subway's selling out of pizza. There's no more croissants in the Subway. You know, like um, you could say this slice sucks, and the real pizza belongs in New Haven, and New York City pizza is a sham. Sure, Scar still sells out every day.
I mean, I think that analogy is correct, but there are some remnants, I think, of the pandemic in both of these subjects because they are intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like more people bought cars, whether it was to get outside of the city or because the subways weren't running in the same way that they were closed down for at night.
It's scary to be
whatever.
around
People bought
people.
cars.
Yeah.
People were, there was just a natural, sense of fear, especially of people who are unclean.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even though now you're not worried that they're going to give you COVID,
We know more.
we
now.
did that for like 2 years where you would see, we'd be wearing masks or whatever, you'd be on the subway, and then a person who was going through a psychotic break would come on and just be yelling. You're like, oh my God, he's annoying, but also he might get me sick.
They're like,
and I think there's like,
whoa, what? Long time no see. I'm like, yeah, it's true, man.
my dude,
What up?
I was hearing voices and I was hoping one of them would be yours.
I'm real, bro. I'm right here.
But I do think there is a lingering element of the pandemic in both of these, that people are scared of the subway because we became detached from people, especially those who were unclean or unsafe, and just more cars came into the city during that period of time. So yeah, I think both congestion pricing and the fear of subways kind of have some pandemic roots.
Sure.
And I'm not sure how you I think your take is probably right. It's like, yeah, you just keep doing your thing and let the right wing chuds scream about how welcome to de Blasio's New York, or this is a blue state when someone gets beat up on the subway, and also like, who cares? Don't read the comments. What's the difference?
Yeah, it's like that story I always bring up. Halftime, great Knicks game. Run out to get a falafel. Someone's like, go back to your own country. I'm like, I can't interact with you because the Knicks are going to start playing any minute, and I have a delicious warm falafel under my arm. It's like, yeah, I'm just going to use this subway, and you can call it a shithole all you want. And sometimes it is. East Broadway, Bowery, those stations are terrible, but like, I'll see you
Also,
in.
who cares,
Yeah.
really?
Well, I mean, I used to care less before I had a family with children, and children don't recognize dirt or danger the same way we do. So that mindfulness has like been kind of an extra hurdle when I travel. But like, I'm heading to Rockefeller Center to see the beautiful tree. I'm going to FAO Schwartz. Like, yeah, I will take that dingy A to the F train.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
But
Whatever. Ultimately, it's it's not a beautiful experience, but the grime I don't think is dangerous. I guess that's what I'm saying.
And I'm an aesthetic guy. I'm not a culture critic, but I think the usability of any city should be tied to beauty and, in my opinion, I know this sounds controversial, but safety, right? Like the air of safety, the culture of safety, it's like, it's nice for everybody if you are unhoused or housed. Um and when I hear people either arguing extreme points about the subway or cars being like, they're a blight to the city, I'm like, that's not true. It's like, we need them for poor people to get to work. I'm like, that's also not quite true. Just like, can we just make our days better, and not an argument about what is ethical in what we use? Like, we just need better tools.
Well, I mean, look, I think New York is extremely safe. All the
Per
stats bear
capita,
that out.
for sure.
Yeah, it's true.
But
It's
safety is
also,
anecdotal, right? If you don't feel safe, it is a heartbreaker.
but but I don't know what you can do about that. That's kind of what I was saying.
But
with
lawmakers,
everything's on the video, but
lawmakers'
we are
job is to do this, right? To address anecdotal concerns.
yeah, but it's also kind of fruitless. I mean, yeah, like there's going to be this one case that gets a lot of attention. Okay, it's Luigi. That's a big deal. We got to arrest this guy. He can't get away with it because then everyone's going to go kill a CEO. So we got to catch him. Like, right. There are proportionate cases that are larger in people's imagination. And what was the fake one with, what was her name? Kitty Genovese, where that was like, she was killed and she yelled and no one came to her aid, and it just wasn't true. People
thought it was true.
Called the cops multiple times, and the cops just didn't come. It was literally the cops didn't arrive. People called like multiple times, saying that there's like, we're hearing someone screaming, and the cops didn't show up.
Right.
But it became an indictment of the civic culture of New York City. Right. This like selfishness and loss of morality. Oh, they'll let someone get murdered and raped to death while being in their own little apartments. And it's like, this just isn't true. It's just not true. So I know what you mean. Like, yeah, there are these anecdotal moments that become emblematic of like something that's wrong. But when there isn't something wrong, that's a lot trickier to manage. I mean, New York is wildly over-policed. It is extremely safe in terms of statistics. It's extremely wealthy. You know, like, how do you make a place more
it's extremely big.
Safe than one? Yeah. It's extremely big. And especially if you take those crime stats and you say, well, let's go to Brownsville and look at the crime stats there. And let's take like the Rockaways out of this equation. Let's take South Bronx out. And you look at the crime stats for like most of Manhattan or parts of Brooklyn that we're talking about, that would be in desirable neighborhoods where a lot of these, the media voices are coming from. It's like even safer by echelons.
And
like, again, I just don't know. I just don't know how you know,
I mean, there's ways
you change that narrative. It's tough.
Yeah. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to live 2 lives in New York. Right. And I think there's a tension. I think if we celebrate New York as a cultural capital of the world, you cannot have like expensive glass condos everywhere, because that kind of stifles the kind of person that would move to New York and create the Ramones, whatever David Byrne, whatever we want to attribute as New York culture, Basquiat, Herring, weird things that happened so long ago that we're still talking about now. And there has been talk that New York has lost kind of its identity as a creative hub. And, you know, like the way to get that back would be to let things fall into disrepair so people can start affording to live in buildings managed by slumlords that may not be safe. There may be drugs there. It may not be the Bloomberg, Carl Anthony Towns version of Manhattan or New York. Williamsburg used to be home to a lot of artists. It's right over the bridge. Now it's mostly finance people, and the neighborhood caters to that. But then my other part of my life is like, well, I decided to raise a family here. And where I still love my recent memory of this grimy New York, where we can roll around and like see interesting people who live on top of each other, who carve out creative spaces in undesirable places. I also would like to feel a modicum of more safety as I raise my kids in this city, knowing that I'm never going to get to the place of a suburb, but still it's appreciated when somebody isn't threatening strangers on a subway platform. Like, my 20-year-old self would have been like, deal with it. My self now, my old head self would be like, there's an easy solution to this, is having like a service person, not a cop, but just like someone on the platform just being like, is everything okay?
Right. I mean, yeah, I think they should be shoveling our walks, but that's just where we differ on this. But I mean, I don't know.
Joke,
I just think
cops should be cleaning.
I think the issue, I think the problem with this lust for safety is that there's no end to it, right?
But safety is not
bad,
you, right?
But what I'm saying is it is safe. So when people are like, sure, I know it's safe, but I want it even safer. I want to feel safe. I'm like, well, then you're treading really carefully or really closely to, I just want like fascism. I mean, I know that's a word that people just throw around a lot, but you're like, I know it's safe. I know I am safe. I know the numbers say it.
Right.
I know the dedication of money and resources and manpower to safety in this city is phenomenally high already, but I don't feel safe. I'm like, well, then what do we do? And again, I'm not talking about you specifically with the subway greeter program.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
I think
I just mean, but what do you do when you're like, okay, we're just gonna lock up every person who's acting erratically? You're like, oh, okay, that's better. And then what's the next step? Well, these kids are acting kind of suspicious. We should lock them up. Like there is no solution except for institutionalization,
but
right?
you're doing. I mean, you're legitimately and correctly discussing the Twitter debate about it. The user debate is different, right? Like, I think if you ask anybody who uses the subway, they're just like, "Oh, a new coat of paint sounds great." Oh, if I feel threatened and there was a service person on the platform, that doesn't sound bad. Or if I don't know where my train is coming or going because the screens are broken, having someone there being like, "Hey, the F is not running. Don't wait on this platform. You got to take the A, go around the corner." Right?
Look, sure, if you want to replace cops and subways with MTA workers who act as guides and like checking on people, all for it. Cool, cool. But I'm saying as a larger, broader idea,
I mean, this is the Twitter debate.
once
Yeah.
I just mean once you say I don't feel safe because there's people around in the city of millions and millions of
But New
people
Yorkers don't
who are
really
acting
say that.
erratic.
New Yorkers are like, we kind of deal with whatever comes up.
But then what are we but then what are we talking about? That's all my thing. So what is it then?
Wait, so
Is it
things
is
cannot
it
incrementally improve? Like technology improves, why can't a mass transit system?
no, but I'm talking about safety. I'm not talking about the trains
No,
running better
but this
or
is tied to
being
safety.
more.
Usability is technological and use like the opportunity to predict the outcome of a tool, right? And when that outcome is hazy, that involves many things, but it's like, listen, if I had to go up to Yankee Stadium this summer, I'd be like, I better give myself extra time to go because one of these trains
Okay,
might,
look, okay, I'm just saying I will accept that you are saying that the trains running on time is part of safety, but I think that's like a different version of what we're talking about. Follow? I'm saying, oh, okay, we can say that. We can say that usability and reliability and comfort are part of safety. I'm okay with that.
Mhm.
I'm only saying in this broader debate about like New York should feel safer. I'm like, are we just talking about crazy people? Like, is that literally it? Is that everything in this entire debate about feeling safe comes down to like, there's mentally ill people around and I'm scared of them?
Yeah, I think, and I
Isn't
think,
that like 99% of this?
I
It's
think,
just there are mentally ill people around New York City and they should be swept up. I'm not saying this is your position.
Mhm.
It's certainly some people's position,
who
but
are
is that
not
this
in New York, right?
entire,
Or who just
but is this
moved to New York?
entire debate?
Or no, it's a
Right.
Twitter version of the debate. And I think the point of mine in this segment is like when you're in the thing, it's a different discussion. And I think it would be disingenuous of me to be like, it's totally fine. Just deal with it. I'm like, oh shit, okay, yeah, some weird stuff happened this week. Can we fix something? Can we do something optic to it? There was guardrails proposed, and some New Yorkers were like, we don't need those. It's safe. Statistically, no one falls in the tracks. And I'm like, all right. The guardrails are expensive. If we feel that way, that's fine. Every other modern city has them. They're not a big deal. They cost $1 million per station. I'm like, so spend it. I don't know. Our taxes are high. Fuck it.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the solution they came up with. I'm like, well, this is even worse. We're just
Which
gonna
one was that?
throw some metal barriers sporadically on the track. I'm like,
I've
well,
still
that didn't
never
solve
seen
anything.
one. I've still never seen one, and I ride the subway a lot. It's in
Yeah,
one station,
they
right?
have them. I've seen them there's a couple off the L that I've seen. Yeah, they're like, so I guess people could sort of stand behind one of them and to avoid people pushing them. Like that seems to be the only
Why do
idea is that you could sort of cling to this metal thing, and it'd be harder to shove you in front of the
why
train.
does JFK and LaGuardia have doors and barriers for their air trains? Because it's safe, right?
I don't know. I've never looked at it and said I'm concerned about falling into the tracks
Are you
that
saying
much.
it doesn't matter that there's a barrier there? Like why
Well,
do modern
again,
cities do it?
again, but I hear you, but this is the same debate we're just going in circles for. I'm like, people, they do it because, okay, it's technology's there, it looks better, it's cleaner. People don't throw things on the tracks. Like that's a to me that's a nice element of it. There isn't a bunch of shit on the tracks. That's good. Visually, it looks better. It's more sterile in a good way than this just pit that's full of rats and garbage and water and that, like, yeah, you're like, maybe I'll end up down there and get murdered. But again, only a handful of people get pushed in front of the tracks all year. Like, not that many people fall onto the tracks. It does happen every now and then, but I'm saying a lot of it is just the same deal. It's perception versus the reality. The reality is people aren't just dropping into the pit and getting run over by cars that frequently. It's just not happening. But because you can imagine someone coming up and being like, "Whoo," and just throwing you in there, it remains this fear. Again, I'm not opposed to them updating the subway. That's cool. I just view that as different from safety. That's all I'm saying.
Sounds like you want nothing to change in New York. Is a team better doing nothing than something? Like, are there cases,
I'm
in a rebuild where you just wait
I'm
up?
in favor. I'm in favor of improvements.
Mhm.
Sure. I just think that a lot of the times the improvements are not based on what actually makes sense in terms of, say, how would I phrase it? Like turning the corner
Mm.
and pushing things forward into a better place.
Mm.
Like, I don't think bike lanes on McGinnis is a good solution. I think tearing up McGinnis and making it a sports complex, that's interesting.
Mhm.
Turning it into a botanical garden with like one lane of traffic, that's interesting to me. Bike lanes, not interesting, not a solution, not a real thing. That's
Well, we
bullshit.
don't ride bikes.
I
I
think
don't care about bikes.
that's what I'm saying. Most people don't.
Mm,
Like,
a city bike is a popular program,
sure, and I'm in favor of it, but most people don't ride bikes.
but most people don't drive.
Oh, of course, but I'm saying for them to say, well, much smaller percentage of people are going to use this on bikes, but we just want to have that. I'm like, that's not solving things. A park would be really interesting, for example. Or, and we're saying in the subways, what you're talking about, the AirTran, yeah, that would be a big improvement. That's a cool idea. I like that.
Mhm.
Because you couldn't throw garbage on the tracks. It wouldn't be gross. You wouldn't see the vermin scampering around. There wouldn't be water. Again, same stuff I was just saying. I like that. I don't like them putting metal barriers sitting around sporadically that you have to walk around and they look ugly because like people are afraid of getting pushed in. That's all I'm saying.
Aesthetic
I don't
king.
like the emotional I don't like the emotional half measures because of like, all right, people are scared, so put some metal barriers around here that they can like stand against. Like, I don't like that. Go do something real and change the system up. Or, okay, before we move on to hoops, how do you feel about the singular trains? Have you been on any of those yet?
The ones that don't have doors that go straight through. I've not been on one of those.
Right.
Are they out? I don't know if
Yeah,
they're out. Which ones?
I've been on. I forget what line. I've been on it twice.
Because the
Um,
ones I take don't have them yet. I ride the new A's
right.
and C's and E's.
So the new ones that are without doors, they're fine.
That's what they do in
I
Japan and
guess,
Taiwan, I think.
yeah, same in Paris as well,
Yeah.
in the metro. There is more of a feeling of freedom in some ways that I think makes people feel less captive. That, like, you can see there's a zillion people on it. It's less of like our car versus the world. And if you like stood up and walked,
Hmm.
you could just easily walk into another thing. But it's also really good if you're there like panhandling or dancing or selling candy because you can just go straight through the whole car effortlessly. So there's a lot of traffic generally, people just walking up and down throughout those cars.
I think like, and they're gonna do that anyway. People who are performing or working, they travel through doors and everything. I like it because it's not a huge difference, but you would think sort of like the dispersion of a liquid inside of a liquid container, like we would compartmentalizing the subways during peak hours is an issue. Like there's less people in this one and more people in this one. It's really jammed up here and it's not really jammed up there. Having the water kind of take form of its container is like a better idea of a subway, right?
Yeah, I think they're better overall.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
There again, I think it feels less compartmentalized, and maybe even going towards what you were saying is this sort of like feeling of security, like the idea that if something
You're
happens, you
seen.
can look that way and you see all
Yeah.
these other people and look at other people, and you could just get up and run
Yeah.
if you had to, and you wouldn't get jammed up in the door and you're trying to slide it open and whatever.
I mean, it's like
So
basketball IQ. We used to talk about street smarts all the time. We stopped talking about it maybe like in the aughts, but there was this whole thing growing up. It's like, well, you did well on the test, but are you street smart? And I'm like, neither sometimes. But it is like I knew what people were saying. It's like if a subway train is if it's peak hours and a subway car is empty, don't go into that car, Or
it is funny though about street smarts, how it was such a thing growing up.
yeah,
It's like yeah, I might have failed that test, but
can you
like,
survive
I know,
a week's
but like I know how to buy weed.
Yeah, yo, seriously.
Like,
That idea has kind of gone by the wayside and like
what would be the current version of it? Is it like, yeah, I know like my bodega man,
I
like I can get a bacon, egg, and cheese. That's right.
I think it's social media literacy where we see very smart people losing their fucking minds on social media and turning into these gremlins and I'm like this is a skill issue. I don't think I have this skill because I get caught up in all this stuff. But like
You don't know what mogging means? Like, wow, you are not touching grass.
But when otherwise entertaining people turn into fascists because they've been yelled at by too many leftists, I'm like, it's a skill issue. Just ignore it. Just like touch MAGA martini glass, please. And I think that is a version of street smarts now. Can you navigate a disgusting environment of social media gracefully?
Are you mogging with a MAGA Mapo tofu martini right now?
There's no more.
You know who's not?
Yeah.
You know who's not mogging with a Mapo tofu MAGA martini? The New York Knicks.
Make basketball great again. Make the Knicks great again.
Make the Knicks great again. What happened? And we were riding high, 9-game winning streak. Now it's all the wheels are off.
The first 3 quarters of that Thunder game was such good basketball. It was thrilling. It was personal. There was storylines within storylines. Hartenstein, Hart, friends, frenemies. There was such good basketball, man. I really enjoyed it. And then every coach is fallible. Tibbs is a wonderful coach, maybe one of the best Knicks coaches of all time. But he runs his players into the ground because he trusts his players and the players want that opportunity. They ran out of gas and then they lost the next game because they expended too much energy in those 3 quarters.
For one, I agree with all that. 2, Thunder will do that to you.
They're so good. I love that team.
They are deep.
I was kind of
and they
rooting
are
for them.
They're incredibly difficult to score on, and it takes a lot of energy. And they just keep running guys at you. And this is without Caruso and without Chet, and they're still that good defensively. It's like Brunson, amazing player, all NBA. Should have been all NBA last year. Maybe he was, but he should have been all NBA first team arguably last year.
Should have been an all-star last year. Yeah.
He's like lower tier MVP, not conversation,
Yeah.
but like if you were going to say he's not in the MVP conversation, but he's in the next tier down.
I agree.
Amazing, great, having a fantastic year, wonderful
The
player.
Jalen Williams tier. Yeah.
Sure. And then it's like, all right, you're just going to have to go at Dort all game long. It's like, here comes, you're like, oh, right. I guess Brunson is like a smaller dude. Oh, now they're blitzing him. Hartenstein and Dort, they're all over him. He's at half court. Like, game's over.
And he doesn't like double
it.
teams. He doesn't. His job is to score the rock. When that double team comes, it just takes the joy out of the basketball. Available on Amazon.com.
He's wired to be a scorer, Andrew.
But I would love watching this Thunder team because Presti, who still has a zillion picks, Jesus Christ, he was the wet noodle guy. It's like, oh, Poku, Usman Jang, like you're just like Chet Holmgren. You're just acquiring these long wet noodles that are gonna change the vertical space of the game. And he's starting Lou Dort, who's basically like a running back in football.
I mean, first to your point about them having all these draft picks, because the team is so deep, they'll get guys who were like, a 10th pick last year, and you just kind of forget they're on the team. You're like, oh, right, this guy was like a high draft pick. He's a lottery dude who if he was on the Knicks, you'd be like, yeah, I'm really excited about this Case and Wallace guy. You just forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have all these guys that are and more to come, but that are on the roster and are talented, and they seemingly come out of nowhere. They're like, no, these were like well-regarded college prospects. They would have been the jewel of like the Wizards rebuild. Yeah. Like, all right, we got these guys. And you're like, oh, they're just some dudes who are on the Thunder.
I think their timeline came faster. Their window arrived faster than Presti thought by like one season. I think the emergence of Shea, Jalen Williams, they're ready. And I think it's like, we'll take it because we have these assets, but we're maybe one season ahead of schedule.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about these guys like
they released Poku.
Case and Wallace. I mean, Case and Wallace was the 10th overall pick like 2 years ago.
He's good. His lineups are good.
I agree. I just mean, he's not like a nobody.
Yeah.
The 10th overall pick recently.
But also paying for Hartenstein was incredible because the Knicks couldn't do it. They kind of overpaid. He's going to be a backup in the playoffs, hopefully. This dude is awesome. I was watching him play. I'm like, do I like Hartenstein and his story more than I like this New York Knicks team? Like, kinda. I love the way he plays. I love his game.
He's great. And just sticking on the Thunder versus talking about the Knicks.
Yeah.
I think SGA a couple weeks ago, I was talking about the MVP candidates, and I was like, yeah, it's like you got Jokic,
Doncic, SGA,
Giannis is up there,
Wemby.
SGA, and I was like, I think Wemby has kind of jumped over SGA.
No.
Well, I retract that.
A lot happens in
at the time. I was like, yeah, again, we're wrong all the time. Let's be clear. But I was like, you know what? I'm not even entertaining SGA over Wemby. Because, I mean, I still do think Wemby on the Spurs is like this title change. Like, that's the worst team in basketball without him.
Yeah.
And when he's out there, they're good. But SGA is just phenomenal. And the fact that he went out there and was the best player on the court against the Knicks, the Celtics, whoever. I'm like, all right, he might actually be in the pole position for MVP now after the last couple weeks he's had.
When collectively the voters seemed to have Jokic fatigue and gave the MVP to Joel, I was like, come on, if you're really going to have fatigue, give it to SGA. He's as good as Joel and he's a guard. Just give it to a guard this time. Like, take it away from a big man if we're going to be kind of arbitrary about it. And like, there was a knock on SGA maybe being helped by free throw attempts, but that kind of went away because we've seen him now play on bigger stages against these really good teams like the Celtics. And it's just like, he's as unstoppable of a guard that you could create in a create a player situation. The dude is awesome.
Yeah, my thing with SGA, a player who I really didn't see evolving into this level of superstar early in his career. I remember watching him this was when he was first on OKC, playing against Sixers, Knicks, whatever. I'm like, oh, this guy's got the bag.
Yeah.
Like he's got the little step back, he's got footwork, he's kind of mechanical,
Yeah.
but in some ways, he at that point seemed emblematic of like how every combo guard is developing these skills.
Mm-hmm.
How every combo guard has handle and has the ability to play off the ball and on the ball. And at that point, he really couldn't shoot threes and wasn't taking very many. So he seemed like this guy who was polished and good at some stuff, but was also indicative of the kind of rising talent and skill set for combo guards league wide. And whether that would have included Jamal Murray or Donovan Mitchell, like that this was just a subsection of NBA personnel. Like he's a good scorer, just like so many other guys, and the Tyrese Maxeys and the Tyler Heroes. But his technical ability
he's so good.
It's just mastery of footwork and in quickness and ball handling. Like I don't know how much of it is intuitive, but I think there was some point where all of that very studied sort of robotic style of play became so natural that now he is this synthesis of creativity and like hard won technical skills.
Yeah, I feel like he is a direct line back to the and 1 guys of like 2 generations ago, because his flair for the dramatic within these micro moments, to your point, is beyond what Tyler Hero does, who has a bag himself, right? Malik Monk, these like elusive guards who are potentially on a highlight reel every night. But SGA,
And like Anthony Simons, whatever.
Yeah.
There's just so many of them.
yeah, definitely. It's speed, agility, all this stuff, and SGA has this bag that reminds me of the stuff the and 1 guys were doing on those mixtapes, because I love it as a performer. There's a level of disrespect to his game. There's a chippiness to his game that I really enjoy. Hero feels like he's going all out. I'm a Hero fan. I think he's awesome.
He's cool.
Yeah, he's
SGA is trying to cook your ass.
SGA is disrespectful and feels optically talk about optics and anecdotes. Feels like he's messing with the game, the opponent, the defense, his man. He's awesome. Like the transition to next for the NBA is here. I wrote on Twitter, it was like, if your grievance is such that you cannot enjoy SGA or Wemby, you might miss these guys. These guys are really real.
In last night's game against the Celtics, they were down Thunder were down about 10 in the third quarter.
Yeah.
Came racing back. They won by about 10.
It was insane. Yeah.
But there was a late sequence that was my favorite sequence of the year so far. And I believe I think Tatum had maybe just hit a jumper, and they were cutting into the lead. It may have been about 5 or 7 at this point. The Celtics were making one last kind of run, and there was about 3 minutes left or so. And they got a steal, I believe, and Tatum took off, and it looked like he had a breakaway dunk. And SGA does a LeBron-esque chase down, like
amazing,
just packs his shit at the rim, just like straight up, just like pins Tatum's like shot.
Tatum goes tumbling,
and then it goes back
stands.
to he goes up, and everyone's just roaring because this is in OKC, and then the ball goes back the other direction, and a lob is thrown to Hartenstein, who just annihilates Derek White, and then Derek White kind of clings to him and drags him to the ground, and then it's an and 1, and they looked at it as a technical, but it wasn't, and it was this like insane swing that involved Tatum getting pinned, Derek White getting yammed on, and it was SGA and Hartenstein, inflicting their will upon the Celtics. And then the game was kind of over.
And you'd think
that was it. It's like, okay, we're done here.
You think Hartenstein dunking on White would be a white on white crime, but no. If you just do a quick Google search, Hartenstein's father is not white, and
It's a bright on white.
Yeah,
crime,
it's a
I
bright
would
on
say.
white crime. But yeah, that sequence, someone had, even the NBA, I believe, made a quick clip of it, and it went kind of viral on my feed. It just kept on popping up, and it was a joy to watch. And I hate talking about ratings, but like, this is the way we consume it now, right? Like, did you see that game? It's like, no, I didn't tune in to the official broadcast, but I saw that sequence and I retweeted it, and it was one of those. It was a WWF moment. There's a clear villain and a clear protagonist, and there were little, like, Tatum was,
Well, it's also the reversal of
yes,
fortunes immediately.
yep, the pendulum swinging in a micro way and a macro way, right? Like, are we looking at the next champions? Tatum trying to argue the call, but the ball moving too fast that the camera pans away from him immediately. Um, the whole idea of Tatum disrespects, and then SGA's kind of emergence. Like, if you like basketball, there's a lot going on
Right.
there.
And not that this feeds into any of our talking points, but it felt as if that was Tatum's not particularly convincing, but the existing breath of Tatum's claim for MVP was extinguished with that one hand. It's like, Tatum, maybe he's the MVP. It's like, no, he's not, and we're not even talking about it anymore. Like, that's the end of it. It ended his MVP in the conversation. No, he's not anymore.
He caught a bad burrito
We
bowl.
saw what happened.
There's been hundreds of burrito bowls sold today and no issues, but you caught the bad one, and I'm not going back there.
No, it was just like, all right, and that's the end of that.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right.
Yeah, I mean,
look. Clearly, I don't think he is really in that conversation anyway. He's in that tier with Brunson and Cat and a bunch of guys who are good players having very good seasons on good teams in that mix for sure. I don't think he was ever actually in that grouping with the aforementioned guys. Because again, it's been 5 guys who are clear cut the best in the league, and Embiid was one of them. He's not right now, and Wemby has replaced him. I think there's clear cut still 5 guys. They've just swapped out Embiid for Victor.
As a quick aside to that discussion, can you rate this take that I'm trying to formulate? There's people arguing that SGA and Oklahoma City's Thunder's success recently, their winning record, kind of elevates him past Jokic, whose team is not winning as many games as Oklahoma City. And this is a common idea that the winningest team should have the MVP on it, because if you're valuable, you win the most games. If that's true, and I kind of believe that, wouldn't that make the case for Defensive Player of the Year as well? Should the top team in the NBA have Defensive Player of the Year, MVP, and Sixth Man if we're doing this?
Right. And the side question, or the reversal of this, would be, well, if we think that Jokic is arguably the best player in the league, and we don't care about record, we don't care about narrative, we don't care about that, are we cool just saying, well, cool, all right, Jokic is going to win 7 in a row? Because we've shown in the past, whether it was with LeBron or MJ, that the precedent has been set. We don't do that.
Kobe. Well, Kobe was never that good, but yes. Yeah.
I mean, Kobe only won 1, and he shouldn't have gotten it.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I just mean Chris Paul that was prime Chris Paul. He was insane that year. But that aside, I think I'm okay with the best player not being MVP, because there's a group of really good players, and I like the idea that, like, Doncic, let's get this guy an MVP. He's an all-timer. Mm-hmm. Let's Giannis has one. Embiid was, if he didn't deserve it that year, he was in position to maybe win one another year and got hurt. Whatever. He's been elite, fantastic player. Get him one of them. Luka, he'll get one. SGA, maybe this is his year. Because if he doesn't win it this year, maybe he'll win it next year, but maybe he gets hurt. And then we'll say, hey, this guy who's like a top 3, top 4 player, man, that would have been cool. Is that cooler than Jokic perhaps deserving it more because his numbers are like ridiculous? Is it cooler if Jokic wins a fourth one because it's more like deserving, or is it cooler if you give it to SGA, who's on the best team in the league, one of the best players, having a phenomenal year? I don't know. I'm saying I can see both ways.
And there's a business aspect to this because the NBA is a entertainment corporation, and they don't want fans to feel like it's rigged, right? So if you give Jokic, in my opinion, the rightful 7 MVPs in a row, fans are going to be like, what are we doing here? How many championships does he have? Is it just like rigged for this one guy that I don't care about? Are we not
But
doing?
also, sorry,
Yeah,
sorry, sorry to cut you off. Also, if he wins 7 MVPs and goes to 1 finals, we're like, well, what are we doing here, man?
yeah. It is,
And that's a problem. That's why fatigue gets caused. Because right now, you're like, I don't know, man. They kind of flamed out last year. They don't look that strong. What if we give it to Jokic and he loses in the second round again? Like, fuck. Like, that's not good for anybody.
Yeah, I mean, there's an NBA literacy that can talk about a player like Anthony Edwards being amazing but imperfect. But the NBA doesn't want that. The NBA wants the fan to be like, we got Michael Jordan 2 on our hands. Let's tune in, let's buy beers, let's make a Super Bowl Sunday or a football Sunday around our product. And the MVP holds a big holds real estate in that discussion, in that I think they don't want people who obsess over the NBA to be like, well, it kind of has to be Jokic because there's too many contradictions, and Defensive Player of the Year has to be on the best team too. They want some justice. Fans want justice, right? And they want fairness, not only for their team but the product. They want to feel like it's rigged. We don't talk about Donaghy for a reason. That is a crazy story because it doesn't benefit any step of the way. Critics, media, people with takes. Having corruption on that level just ruins the whole thing. Gambling. Did you see LeBron James was advertising for DraftKings on his Twitter? That is like fucked up, man. Are we not going to talk about that? I mean, not us.
You know the weirdest thing? No, the weirdest thing about Jokic. The weirdest thing. You know what stat he's leading the league in that you might not expect?
I don't know. The defense rebound percentage. I don't know. What is it?
3-point percentage. He's shooting 47% from 3.
He's the best player in the NBA right now. However good
But, like,
SGA
this
is,
is a guy.
Jokic has him.
But this is a guy who's averaging 36% for his career. 36% last year, 38%, 34%, 39%, 31%, 31%, 47.
He should get
47%
MVP.
from 3. What the fuck is that?
He should get MVP. LeBron James should be all NBA first team. All these things are true in my fucked up mind. Like Tatum should not be NBA first team over LeBron James ever until LeBron retires. But you're trying to include fans, and not to change subjects, but I think the NBA is making it too difficult. If capturing 50-50 fans is the objective, which I don't think it necessarily should be because it's doing fine. But like, I always say they should hire writers, right? But I'm not talking about in terms of like flowery Mike Breen prose before a matchup on a Sunday or in the playoffs. Can we give these guys literate nicknames that people would understand, like myself? Like the Glove, the Mailman, Air Jordan, Vinsanity. Not the most clever nicknames like Himmy Butler is the best one. Too complicated. You got to create a universe where these guys are like creative players, a team in a video game, your crew, a rap group, superheroes. They have to create better, simpler, usable nicknames.
I mean, I'm with you because the characters we have right now, like there's a reason that Embiid is a divisive character and he's the process.
I hate that nickname. I hate it.
But I don't like it either particularly, but it's why he's divisive because he tied himself for his career to the process.
Yeah.
And I am the process.
That's cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Like I'm saying it has a backstory. It's weird.
Yeah.
Good. And I'm with you though. You go back and you had the answer and the truth and the glove, the mailman, the iceman. Right now it's like ant.
Durantula, like,
But no one uses those, right?
yeah, no,
No one uses Slim Reaper.
yeah,
No one uses those.
yeah.
Like even though Slim Reaper is like it's clever, but it's okay to have as like in your back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone just knows him as KD, and it's like not as good. CP3,
It's SGA.
PG, like these aren't SGA. SGA sucks as a nickname.
Yeah. Jokic doesn't have a nickname. It's crazy. If these guys,
Yes, he does. The Joker. He's the only one who's got one.
that's good. That's
or
good.
one of the
You're
few.
right. You're right.
He's
You're right.
he's got the Joker.
Like,
and it works.
I don't like the freak, or I believe Wemby is the alien, or Nike's trying to push that because it makes them anecdotal. It makes them otherworldly. It's just like, well, they're not a part of this. This is unfair how tall and physically advantageous they are. Like, they're not a part of this universe. I think you should bring them into the universe. And like, there's precedence for Wemby, Tim Duncan, David Robinson, French players, Rudy Gobert, Tony Parker, Wet Noodles, Marcus Camby. Like, Wemby is not an alien. He is just next. And God, the NBA, I just feel like it's so simple. Give the Thunder better uniforms and give these guys usable nicknames.
We may have talked about this before. I can't remember. Did I talk about the NBA? I think it's called like it's kind of their version of like League Pass Alert. I forget if we spoke about
Maybe
this.
so. Refresh.
It's on NBA TV,
Yeah.
and you go to it, and it's going back and forth between games.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
yeah, totally.
Okay, this is the end of this one. They'll cut to it full. There's 2 games that are with 5 minutes left. They'll split screen it. They'll go to one for a little bit. I think it probably started with the NFL doing its red zone coverage, and it's the same idea. So you watch it for like a couple hours, and you get a bit of all the games, and they cut to the ones that are close at the end, and you watch it on the full screen. For
gamblers, yeah.
But when it cuts to the game actual coverage, you're getting the real announcers for like that last minute and a half.
Yeah.
But prior to that, you're getting the same guy, and he's the one who does the highlights for the NBA. Mm-hmm. And he is so knowledgeable of the players. He is so fast. Mm-hmm. He's so colorful. He provides background stuff. And it's not just like who went to Pepperdine.
Right.
Like, he knows his stuff. I mean, he's mentioning players. He's saying, oh, there goes so-and-so who's having a great year, blah, blah. Like, sure. He always so tough when he goes left. Like, it's just like a kind of singular tour de force by this guy. And he's using nicknames. He's excited. He's yelling. And you watch that. I watched this a few weeks ago. In the midst of everyone complaining, you're like, what are you talking about? I'm watching it here. There's end of the games. There's dunks. This guy's fired up. I was like, this is such a good product. He's using nicknames. He's out here. Yeah. He's here selling it. And then you cut over and it's like, yeah, we're going to tie our All-Star break really around the Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal. That's really going to be the pivot point to this entire All-Star weekend. They're going to draft the teams. I'm like, are you shitting me? You got this guy on payroll who's loving the game. Yeah. He's exciting. He's making me fired up. I'm like, hell yeah. He's like, nah.
I mean, I know some companies, like entertainment companies, even sports entertainment companies, send all their talking heads to like comedy camp, just to learn timing, just to learn when not to walk over people's punchlines, just to, gild the lily when appropriate. And it's so apparent when I find out. I'm like, right, these guys have just like a 5-week crash course in writing. And I love Breen so much, and he brings out the best in Clyde, who is like sadly fading because time. But like, Breen is so good at writing, and there's certain other announcers that are amazing, and then you see the ones that are not, and I'm like, this is night and day. We need this framing to be correctly done, and the NBA doesn't have to like change the rules or like even redesign an identity like the Thunder. Send these guys to comedy camp.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Virtually.
Done.
It's storytelling, right?
Give them Like, give me and you some notepads, and we'll come up with nicknames for these guys, and you're just going to run them into the ground.
What would Jimmy
He's gonna-
Butler?
every time you talk to them.
What would be Jimmy Butler?
Himmy's fine.
No, it's not.
Himmy's
It
fine.
has to be the Jolt. The him. The him is not actually pretty funny.
The him. Oh, right. The Himmy.
The Himmy is not bad. But like
The himbo.
it's too confusing because him is an online joke. And you don't want to capture the people online. They've been captured. You want to capture people who are sipping those Mapua magnums.
A magnum of MAGA Mapo tofu martinis while mogging.
It's the Mapua Magnum mirror, Ben. It's catching your reflection in that large ass glass.
In that greasy slick
That's right.
of chili oil.
Did you make Mapua this week? Quickly, I need to know. I need an update.
I have not, but
Okay.
I'm still in Mapo zone.
Okay. Well, I'll check back next week.
Okay.
Jimmy Butler, man, what the fuck?
Well, first off, let's talk about real Heat culture. Josh Richardson. Now that guy gets it. He leaves, he comes back. Culture just stays with him.
Dion the island waiters.
So, okay, Jimmy has had some, I guess you could call them malcontent experiences in the past.
Famously.
Most notably in Minnesota, where he, asked to be traded and sort of went on a public humiliation ritual of his teammates.
Kobe-esque,
so on and so
Mamba
forth.
mentality.
So, this situation in Miami, is it just that they won't give him a new contract?
Allegedly, they didn't extend him. I don't blame them. He's getting older, and Riley told him to shut up when that was happening about something else. Like, we're not winning. We lost. So our star player should shut up. He did not take that well. And the death of his father.
I mean,
there's multiple theories. Riley asked him to play more minutes and more games, and I think he sacrificed the game not to be with his ailing father, and he missed his death.
I mean, I get it. Like, if Pat Riley, for justifiable reasons, thinks that he is bigger than any player, especially one who's like 35 years old. Like, hey, what have you done for us lately? Mm-hmm. You aren't Dwayne Wade. Mm-hmm. You came in, you took us to 2 finals. You're great. But you know what? We're probably not going to pay you what you want, and you're going to leave, and you're not part of our plans going forward. So, like, why let you flex on the organization?
Or
Dwayne Wade?
Yeah.
Remember, they let Dwayne Wade walk too.
Yeah. I mean, cynically, they could talk about wins and losses and championships, but Butler was just getting older. And as a side note, Butler and Wade, same tier. Give Butler prime Lamar Odom and Shaquille O'Neal, and Butler will have had success that will warrant a statue. Jimmy Butler is one of the most wonderful performers of this basketball era.
I mean, I think Jimmy Butler's ability to seize the moment
it's fucking
in playoffs
sick
has led to some improbable runs for the Heat that have salvaged their last 5 years. They have not had dominant teams. They've been pretty good. They've developed some solid talent. Like, Bam is a very good player. Tyler Hero has become a borderline all-star. Granted, he's in the vein of many other combo guards like we discussed, but he is good. He's legitimately an excellent
It
offensive
maximized
player.
him for sure. Not Bam, but him.
But none of that has worked if Jimmy hadn't rose to the occasion and just dragged that team further than they should have gone in the playoffs multiple times. And when people look at LeBron's time in LA and like, well, it's kind of disappointing. Well, they won a title. And Jimmy took a team that we sort of collectively said, well, he's retiring. He's going to Miami. He's going to wear some Cuban shirts and drink some big face espressos.
Dine at
and
Versailles.
Chill
with Dizza.
And exactly. And instead, He chilled with Dizza, and he took them to 2
Yeah.
finals.
Shout out to Andrew's Skate Shop, right next to Big Face Coffee. Um, this is kind of like a juicy, eventful story because if Make a Basketball Great Again Nation has a grievance with all these liberal players, player empowerment, the ideas of that they're not kind of on the political party of, and you have management kind of ringing the worker, which is Jimmy, and Jimmy's like, "I got you here because of my hard work," and Riley being like, "This is cultural, heat culture. I can replace you because we've established a system that gets the best out of marginal players like yourself. Be grateful that you were in Miami." And in my personal answer to that is like, to your point about Jimmy carrying this franchise and giving them this reputation of being an excellent organization, it's because he was good, not because he bought into a culture. Bam has underachieved. Hassan Whiteside was paid money. That didn't work out. Dion Waiters was on the team. This team was Jimmy saved them from the Whiteside Waiters era. LeBron James left them in Las Vegas, being like, "I don't want to play for you anymore. I'm going to take South Beach, no state income tax, and my side piece, as we found out this week, and leave it all behind and go back home to Cleveland because I don't want to be around you."
Well, I think, with Jimmy, he clearly has had a falling out with Riley for whatever reasons. And
Riley always does this.
when someone says, I was going to say, Wade left. Wade has a statue. He's the most beloved player, even more than LeBron. He's the embodiment of Heat culture, of the organization. For all of their pinnacle moments, they have been with Wade and on the team. Whether or not he was the best player kind of didn't matter. He is still the face of the Miami Heat. And at the end of his career, he still went off and he played for like Cleveland,
Chicago.
wherever the hell he went, Chicago.
Yeah. Yeah, and we forget that Riley famously resigned via fax in New York City, and his tenure in Los Angeles was worth a dramatic TV show depiction of. He's been kind of a sourpuss forever, and I think he looks the part of a front office guy. He is definitely has the hardware. Famously, drops his rings on the table, but like, who do those rings belong to? Certainly him, and certainly Phil Jackson, and Tex Winters, and all these minds, these basketball minds of the 90s and aughts. But to attribute it to a culture, I believe, is complicated.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I guess to me, when I look at the way that Jimmy needs a new contract, the way that money has to come back towards Miami in order to match up, like, what does he make? 40, 45 million? Something
His
along.
opt-in is 50, I believe.
Opt-in is 50. It's like, where does that leave you? If he opts out, there's going to be very few teams who have the money to sign him. And those teams are ones that are the Wizards, or teams like Brooklyn and Utah, which would seemingly have no interest in giving a large contract
And vice
to
versa.
a veteran.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, he will probably do what James Harden did, which is take your opt-in and then say, trade me.
Yeah.
Make the money work somehow, whatever.
That's what I would do.
Take some expiring contracts, whatever it is, but I'm getting my money, and then I'm going to say trade me.
Yep, that's what I would do too. There was, pie in the sky rumors of Golden State because people love Steph Curry, and the rumored package was Kuminga and stuff. And Kuminga just got hurt, so that's probably off the table. But also, the money doesn't quite work there. We've seen.
But wait, what if you added in a team who's willing to help make the money work, but didn't really care about getting better in the trade? they kind of want to give up some of their good players and take back bad contracts. Like, can we find a loser franchise to plug into this equation?
I mean, a few. Who are you thinking?
Let's get the Kings in there and the Wizards, some teams who just don't care. So, like, we'll just throw them into the mix. And then we'll get all the good players to teams we want them to be on. And then the Kings will go away.
The Miami Heat Twitter podcast nation always has these hypothetical deals where somehow Miami gets De'Aaron Fox, a bona fide superstar. The best player in this deal somehow ends up in Miami. De'Aaron Fox has also maybe rumored to be on the block, but he is like probably the most expensive player that will hit the market if he does this season and this summer. I don't think he will. They're playing better after Mike Brown was dismissed, but
yeah, I would agree with, if they want to keep him, then they probably can, because they're the ones who can pay him the most. And if you were going to let him walk, you don't fire Mike Brown.
Exactly. He's too good. You build around Fox. But yeah, I love this because the Heat are going to be wrapped up in this, to your point, I think through next season. Maybe they could just pull the trigger and just like cut their losses. But Riley has said that he wants to remain competitive and he believes in Bam and Hero. Let's go. I love this. I love it.
Beef stew, Tobias Harris, whatever the other guy's name is, like Finici, Fonicelli, Fonzarelli.
No, he's locked up. He's waiting trial. He's a hero for us all, and terribly handsome.
But the Pistons, I actually would love if the Pistons could figure out a way to get Jimmy.
It would.
Cade and Jimmy is cool.
Cade. So you would make the whole roster available except Cade. Ivy just went down for the season with a broken.
No, you don't have to give. I'm saying you don't have to give Miami that much stuff for Jimmy.
I agree.
Honestly,
some picks.
Like, look, we'll give you Tim Hardaway Jr.
Duren.
We'll give you Tobias Harris, who's got one more year on this, and one. Maybe you get a Mon Thompson. I wouldn't want to give up Mon Thompson, but I'm saying maybe you give up one of your young guys and a pick, and just make the money work.
Yeah,
I would not give up any of the Thompson twins if I'm running a team. But I believe
that was a different Thompson twin. I just get so confused. But I would make Riley squirm. This is Riley's downfall. I mean, he's a god in the NBA history, but like, he has no out here. He's like Wemby playing chess in Washington Square. Like, he's gonna get checkmated soon.
You know what never gets checkmated? The perfect podcast. Cookies.
I love cookies.
Yeah.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.